We've been at many of these. We've had many long discussions about what works, what doesn't work, and where we should be going. But you've been in Saudi now for
nearly 5 years.
5 years,
yeah,
wow.
Coming up close to 5 years.
So a lot different than the other places we cross paths, like Jordan and elsewhere. But tell us a little bit about Saudi and what the plan is for 2030, the grand plan for 2030, and whatever else you can tell us about Saudi.
Yeah, I've been fairly fortunate, to be honest with you, Curtis, because when I went out to Saudi in 2015, it was a very different place.
Absolutely.
There was no Vision 2030. There was no women driving. In fact, there were very few women even in the workplace. But have I seen some changes?
I'm sure.
I think led by the Crown Prince and the royal family. They've set a vision. The Vision 2030, as it's well known, but it's actually a set of guiding principles on how to diversify away from the main hydrocarbon source of income. And a core pillar of that is to develop infrastructure.
Okay.
To spend money on road and rail and of course our favourite subject, airports. What people don't know is that Saudi is actually a very popular tourist destination for a very large and an ever-growing, Muslim population.
In addition to Hajj.
Yeah, and so Umrah and Hajj, and of course access to a wonderful array of treasures that Saudi have, but they've kept them to themselves. They've hidden them. So there's many different pillars of what they're now trying to roll out. So yes, diversification away from oil is obviously the core one. Infrastructure development, bringing the private sector into all sectors of development, and of course opening up to other forms of attraction for the kingdom. We are seeing sporting events. They're hosting WWE. Formula E, concerts. We're even seeing cinemas now in Saudi. I mean, things that we take for granted.
Exactly.
But we have only got to go back a few years, and these things didn't exist in the kingdom. So slowly, it's recognising that its population is young, dynamic, hungry, very social media conscious, and for that, I think they're having to make some changes.
The average age is quite low.
Yeah, and it's a sort of a bit of a structural issue for a lot of the Middle East countries, but the population for Saudi now is roughly around 35 million people, of which about 10 million are expatriates, predominantly in the worker force, blue-collar worker force.
So 1 in 3.
Yeah, but of the 25 to 28 million of Saudis, more than 50% of those are under the age of 30.
That's incredible.
And they have another issue, is that 50% of those are just coming up to school leaving age. So if you look at the percentage
17,
of people
18.
that are now coming to 16, 17 with a high school certificate, where are they going to work? What kind of jobs are available to them? What's the kind of economy?
Secondary, all that. Right?
And 50% of those are female.
Wow. So
and where were the girls going to go? And when you come back to Riyadh or Jeddah next time, Curtis, one thing you'll notice, the customs officials now, 50% of those are girls.
Well, that's a huge change.
Ladies in the front row of customer service roles, whether it be at the hotel, whether it be in the shopping mall, or border force and border control.
And was that the case in 2015 when you arrived?
Absolutely not at all. I mean, Saudi Cargo, as you know, is one of our investments. When I joined the company in 2015, 2016, 3,500 employees, not one lady.
Really? Wow.
Not one lady. I'm very proud to tell you now that in the last 18 months, we've had a very considered program of bringing ladies into the workforce, and we now have women in every single department in the organisation.
So in 4 years, that's major.
Yeah, well, I mean, and to be honest with you, the big push has happened in the last 18 months. And the girls are good, they're bright, they're intelligent, and they're putting their male colleagues to shame, which is good competitive pressure.
And energetic. And in the same period, this push towards privatization has really come to the fore in the last 2 years?
I mean, the division was set out in 2016, and I think the first thing that they recognised is that to allow foreign direct investment, they had to have the building blocks in place. There has to be a PPP law. There has to be protection and risk balance for those that are going to bring investment in and partner with the government. The government departments or the contracting agencies in whatever sector, they have to have experience on how to deal with a privatisation process. So unfortunately, although the pressure was there for privatisation, the core building blocks weren't there. And I think the first couple of projects that they put to market weren't really very well received, and the duration of the bidding process was too long, too complicated. And as you know, bidders and investors don't like long, complicated, untransparent processes.
Get in, get it done.
Which absorb a lot of time and money.
Exactly.
They're great for advisors, but they're not great for investors. So they've gone back, and now I'm pleased to say the law's in place, the National Centre for Privatisation.
Okay.
Yeah, the core ingredients of making sure there's a consistent, well thought through PPP model, which is also supported, by the likes of the World Bank and IFC, means that I think there's a lot more investor confidence. So I'm quite confident that in all sectors, whether it's housing, whether it's schools, the hospital and healthcare sector, and of course our beloved aviation and airport sector, I think in the next 12 to 18 months I think we'll see a considered programme of privatisation.
And what are the sort of early projects in the pipeline for the next, say, 6 months? What do you see happening on the aviation side?
On the aviation side, I mean, the absolute priority of the government is getting Jeddah up and running. Jeddah Terminal 1, the new Jeddah Terminal, which has been in construction for the best part of 10 years. So their absolute focus is to get that working, and to get all of the airlines and the main hub for Saudia, the home host carrier, to get that consolidated into Terminal 1. The terminal had its official King's inauguration very recently. It's going from domestic now into some international routes.
That was earlier this year, right?
And I think by the time we get to the end of this year, I think we'll see a lot more of the international routes being poured in. The last city pairs, being Dubai and Riyadh, the two busiest city pairs, will probably be the last. And then once they then have completed, then they will mothball the old terminals.
They will, okay.
I think for the other airports in the kingdom, there's a program that's being led by two areas. One is GACA, who own the 27 airports, and some of those have been corporatised, like Dammam, like Riyadh. The next phase for the journey for Jeddah is that corporatisation.
Okay.
That will then, I think, enable some of the operations and maintenance contracts that they've got in mind to be released. So that may be one of the first things we see in the next 6 months. And then beyond that, there's some bigger airports in the kingdom that have got a development journey, and I think they'll be looking to put those together, maybe in some cluster or bundle and package.
Well, and the other interesting thing we've been seeing is these free zone cities that they're looking to develop as well. So it's greenfield cities, hospitals, airports. I know they're still on the drawing board, but this could be quite interesting in terms of...
I mean, there's one that they've launched now for Riyadh, or it's going to be launched very soon. It's called the Integrated Logistics Unbonded Zone.
Okay.
It'll be one of the first free zones in the kingdom. It's 3 million square metres. I mean, it's huge.
Massive.
This is a plot. But of course it requires everything from coffee shops to firehouses to, obviously, the primary aim is to bring, organisations like Siemens and GE and Apple and Alibaba and of course...
It's like clustering.
And bring them into a single point and have it close to the airport, to create corridors into the rail system, into the cargo zone that exists on the airside, and obviously into the to the road network.
Exactly.
So I think over the course of the next 4 or 5 months, I think they're pre-testing that in the market at the moment.
Okay.
We as Tarabot are quite excited by that. We've got a number of core clients that we work with that are saying to us, look, Lee, we're very committed to serve the population of 35 million people, particularly e-commerce, but I don't see our core model being an investor into the warehouses and into the infrastructure. So we can bridge that gap, and we're looking forward to doing so.
Maybe let's just wrap up. I didn't really get a chance to ask you about Tarabot, but tell us a few minutes about Tarabot, what they do, and...
Tarabot is an exciting little venture that was created some 15 years ago by some of the best families, some of the best connected and conglomerate families in Saudi Arabia. They have a passion for transportation infrastructure and for aviation and for airports. And we've been involved now in investing in everything from cargo to logistics to MRO, engineering. We've bid for successfully a number of rail projects. Unfortunately, those projects didn't fully get completed, but we're ready to support light rail, roads, bridges, and of course the wave of airport developments.
And then all this inward investment back into Saudi, diversifying away from oil, that's part of that program.
Yeah, and I think where Tarabot adds value is We understand the market. We understand the legal framework. You know, we are Saudi. You know, my team are Saudis. My boards of directors are Saudis. They're very well connected. Many of them are chairmen of some of the biggest organizations in Saudi Arabia. We can act as the glue. We can give you comfort, we can give you facilitation, and we can give you operational coverage. Yep. And it means as a foreign direct investor, we can share some of that risk with you. And unlike funds, we're a long-term investor. We have no finite exit period.
And you need local knowledge and sensitivity to navigate any country, and Saudi in particular. So
yeah, and I think you'll see more and more, Curtis, over the coming weeks and months. Local content is absolutely crucial, because by developing local content, they can take that, you know, huge thousands and thousands of boys and girls coming out of school in the next 3 or 4 years and start offering them long-term jobs. Absolutely. So it's Saudiization and local content initiatives, even to the extent of all RFPs. And for those of your readers and listeners that are looking to participate in Saudi, my one single bit of advice to them is you've got to, in your document of proposal, state very clearly how you are going to enable local content.
Okay, interesting.
And it may not even be explicit in the requirements, but it's for most of
it's just good tactical practice in any bid. Make sure that you've got local content.
Very much so, and even pure consulting roles as well.
Absolutely.
You know, unless you can evidence that you're actually going to be investing in the local economy in some way, setting up an office. Yep. You know, retaining some of that knowledge within the kingdom.
Transfer of knowledge, transfer of skill. Absolutely.
And this is a stated strategy which has been well publicised now by most of the government agencies.
Okay. Well, it sounds like you're having fun. So carry on.
Many thanks.
Cheers. Thanks.